So today is voting day, and we'll have to wait and see what happens. I think it is very, very important that the Republicans lose this election, not just on the presidential level, but on state and local levels, especially the ultra-conservative nut jobs that we've seen. I hope that Bachmann loses. I hope that Akins loses, and so on and so forth. And it's not just because I'm a Democrat. It's also because I was raised a Republican. And I think that the only salvation for the Republican Party is to lose, and to lose big. I don't think they're going to lose very big. I think a lot of races are very close, and we have to just wait and see. The Republican Party some time ago was hijacked by the religious right. Now, this actually started way back when. The Southerners were Democrats for 100 years or so because they refused to belong to the party that freed the slaves. The problem is Southern Democrats were very conservative and really didn't have a lot in common with the rest of the party. And there was an eventual movement over to the Republican Party, which, as a Democrat, I thought was a great idea. Let them get out of the party and go to where they were more welcome. But then we had Jerry Falwell. And Jerry Falwell was one of the architects of the hijacking of the Republican Party by the religious right. And over the years, it's gotten worse and worse. We're at a point now where most of the moderates have either been kicked out of the party or marginalized. The party as a whole has a very extreme slant to it. Now, I don't think that, if you could actually poll Republicans all across the country, I don't think you'd find that extreme slant, but you do find it in the politicians who are running. And that is because they're catering to certain groups, and unfortunately, some of these groups have a lot of money. They're catering to business, of course, and to special interests like coal and oil, but political parties catering to special interests is nothing new. The Republican Party just caters to special interests that have a whole lot of money. And because of this, of course, they are climate denialists, which is becoming more and more absurd every day. And not just watching the weather, but looking at the science. They're very creative when they show the hockey stick graph. They tend to cut it off at various different times, but right before the change of the last 30 years. And frequently, they even have an incorrect axis. It shows it going up to the year 2000 when it doesn't go up to the year 2000. It stopped like 1970 or something. But they're very creative liars. But the worst part, even beyond that, is the catering to the religious right. I think we've seen how extreme they are. The Republican Party is trying to say there is no war on women. There is a war on women. They're attacking women's health care. And whatever you may feel about abortion, the truth is you can't prove when exactly a life begins. And there are lots of arguments. Some people say, well, yeah, sperm meets egg. You've got the zygote that can grow into a human being. And because of that, they want personhood laws, saying that is a person with all the rights of the person. Yeah, and are we going to let it vote? But beyond that, at least 1 in 4 pregnancies, and it's more likely 1 in 2 with the recent data, results in a spontaneous termination. In other words, the fertilized zygote, the person, is flushed out of the woman's body without her even knowing about it. So if we pass a personhood law, what are we going to do about that? Are we going to start controlling women's menses? It's ridiculous. Where they're going is ridiculous. They then complain about, and honestly, this has got to be one of the stupidest things in the world. When I was in Catholic school in the late 1960s, nobody then believed that birth control was wrong. We just felt that the Pope was, that was ridiculous. And most Catholics don't believe that birth control is wrong. And not only that, I think the latest statistics were 52% of Catholics felt that Obama was right and that all organizations, including Catholic organizations, should offer the option of birth control on their insurance. To start asking for religious exceptions for what is really basic health care could end up with all sorts of problems if you have a company that's Jehovah's Witnesses that doesn't want to pay for blood transfusions for any of their employees, not just the ones who are Jehovah's Witnesses. What about people who don't believe in medical care at all and don't want anything covered? What about people who believe in alternative medicine and they want that covered? So this is a very slippery slope. And I know a lot of times people bring up the concept of the slippery slope, and it's not even remotely slippery. This one is. But when Sandra Fluck wanted to testify and was not allowed to testify, and Rush Limbaugh went out of his mind with, I think he lives out of his mind, so it was very near the edge. So that was a very short trip for him. And attacked her. He missed the whole point. I think he did it deliberately. He's a charlatan. Many years ago, when he got started with this, business of being this right wing, whatever, I listened to a conversation on the radio, group of radio personalities who'd known Rush for years, and they said it was a fake. They said that he deliberately set this up to go out there and make money. Now, at this point, I don't know. Maybe he believes in these views. I don't know. But back then, you heard a lot of radio. This is 30-some years ago. A lot of radio people were saying, oh, yeah, the guy just found something that worked and he went. He's become essentially a shock jock. But the point he missed was that these young women at Georgetown couldn't get birth control because Georgetown is a Catholic college, even for other medical reasons. Now, I looked up the statistics once. I'm not given any references below. If anybody really wants them, I can find them for you. But it's 30% or so of prescriptions for birth control pills are for birth control alone. That means there's 60% that are for something else, or for birth control as well as something else. I mean, let's face it, a woman has endometriosis and she's married, and but she also wants to restrict her family at the same time. Well, yeah, the birth control does both. So, if you're going to start dividing it up, we're in real trouble. But that's why you need to fund birth control pills. It's not just for birth control. This issue has come up again and again and again, that birth control, quote-unquote, pills are hormones, and they are needed for lots of different things. So, yeah, there is a war on women. And there's a war on gays, and we see that. Hey, we just caused the big hurricane, and apparently we caused Katrina. I'm still trying to figure out where the gay cabal is that's causing the hurricanes. Yeah, I don't know, but nobody's told me. These people are insane, and that's all I can say. That gays, women, immigrants are all going to be in a lot of trouble if the Republicans gain power. But in a sense, more importantly than that, and one of the reasons I say more importantly is that Mitt Romney's an opportunist. I mean, we've seen how he lies. Mr. Etch-a-Sketch. When he gets into office, he's going to sell out the religious right. George W. Bush did the same thing. He had, as a matter of fact, I forget what it was, the Office of Religious whatever, in the, during his presidency. And then he, hired some guy to run it, and then just completely ignored it and everything they said. And the man who ran it wrote a book about that, how, the religious right and the religious were completely marginalized. But of course they were marginalized, because once a man gets into the office, you got to actually run the country, and you can't cater to this small group, especially since it actually is a small group. It's a very, very noisy small group, but it's a small group. And it's a small group that has a lot of money behind it, because it has, amongst other things, the Mormons in the Catholic Church, which is really ironic, because the main core of the fundamentalist Christians hate the Mormons in the Catholic Church. But they'll be perfectly happy to take their money. So there is a lot of money there. And they've, of course, tied themselves to the coal industry and the gas industry and the Koch brothers and who I wish would go out and do some coke. It might do them and us some good. And this has damaged the Republican Party. We once had people like George Romney, Ronald Reagan, the grand old man of the GOP, Barry Goldwater, Nelson Rockefeller. These were giants. I may not have liked them or their policies, but they were logical. They made sense. Reagan and Goldwater made it very clear they didn't care if people were gay or not. They thought that wasn't the government's business. We had a really terrible law, and my mind escapes me as the guy who was the real creep. I mean, he really was a creep, and I've always tried to find video of this guy. Why can't I think of his name? But they were trying to pass this very anti-gay law that basically said that anyone who worked with children, teachers, teachers' aides, or everything, if they were gay, they couldn't work with children. They were going to investigate to see if they were gay and everything. And Ms. Orange Juice, I just had her name on the tip of my tongue. Isn't this awful? Came out to, campaign for him. But the whole kibosh was put on the thing because Reagan just said, it's a bad law. Don't vote for it. And that was the end of it. But I'll put the links down below to who I'm talking about. Anita Bryant. And why can't I think of the idiot who's trying to pass the law? I honestly try to forget about him, but I've really tried to find some video about him. Because if you watch him on video, you just sort of shiver. Talk about hate incarnate. I'd call him reptilian, but that might be an insult to reptilians everywhere. But there was a party that had, broad shoulders. But it doesn't exist anymore. And for the Republican Party to be strong, to recoup, it needs to lose. It really needs to lose. I think that's their only chance. So let's just hope that it loses. We need two parties. We really do. I mean, the two-party system works here in America. I know there are a lot of people who think, oh, we need more parties. We really don't. And I'm not going to argue that right now. Our system works because it works. And I know that sounds really silly, but it's evolved over a period of time, and it works. Other countries have different systems that work for them because it works for them. You don't, we've never been able to have a very successful third party. We've come close a couple of times, but even with great personalities like Ross Perot or even more, Teddy Roosevelt, they can't sustain partly because the two-party system works. But at one time, these two parties were big houses that allowed all sorts of different ideas and thoughts. And we still do in the Democrats. We have the Blue Dog Democrats. And we have Democrats like Dianne Feinstein, who is a fiscal conservative and a social liberal. And that's what I am. I'm a fiscal conservative but a social liberal. But especially when it comes to using other people's money, I'm a social liberal but a fiscal conservative. Personally, my beliefs are a little different. I think there's a difference between what one does individually and what you're going to pay for using taxpayers' money. Anyway, I just wanted to say that we can only hope for the best and hope this works. And if the Republicans do win the White House especially, well, as I said, Mitt Romney will sell everybody out. We know that. My biggest fear is he's going to bring in the Bush crew. All those horrible people that worked for George W. Bush. And the other thing I'm concerned about is that, we're going to end up with a deadlocked Congress again. We don't need that. Anyway, goodbye. I've got the phone ringing. Got to go anyway. Thanks for listening.